Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Abundology podcast. It's that time of year again where we get together with my favorite astrologer, Theresa Tran, and talk about what we can expect for the summer months. We do this quarterly, every quarter, and I can't believe, Theresa, that we're already at summer.
Yes, thank you, Renee, for having me here. And hello, everybody. And yes, the first half of the year has gone by incredibly quickly. And I was just thinking as I was preparing for this, looking back, that so much of the work has been internal. And now it starts coming into the material realm, into collective consciousness, and it really starts to be manifest in the real world.
That's interesting you say that because I've done a lot of readings lately where people, have had these internal shifts and now they're showing up, manifesting in the outside world. So, of course, it would be in the astrology.
Yes. And I think one thing to really remember as we approach Q3 of 2025 is that we have had, so many planets changing signs. And one of the more recent ones was Jupiter entering its sign of exaltation, Cancer, on June 9th. And so Jupiter has not been that happy and hasn't bestowed on us its blessings, optimism, energy, and all those things. And if you think of Jupiter as Santa Claus and Cancer as the home, this is where the gifts come and the blessings and the optimism. And I don't want to overpromise Jupiter in Cancer. And I also want to remind us that we are moving into this quarter with more protection, more gifts, more bountiful, more benefic energy than we have had in over a year.
Yeah, and being a Gemini and having Jupiter in Gemini the last year, and now it moved into Cancer on my birthday, I can feel the shift. Already things seem lighter. Well, and that happened right before we had all of the protests and to see millions of people out there. So we see that. We see the energy lightening a little bit.
Yes. And then at the end of June, we also have had a beautiful new moon with Jupiter in Jupiter Cazimi. And so more of that clarity is coming. And like you said, a lot of people are feeling like this conflict, like what's going on? And the shift is starting to happen, and the clarity is definitely coming. And I think a lot of these Jupiterian expansiveness, Jupiterian belief, Jupiterian faith, and optimism really starts to come out in Q3. So that's
Great.
something to look forward to because, of course, there's also Saturn and a lot of planets having their hand in the mix. But if we approach it thinking that if we're thinking of taking the leap or if we're thinking of making a move, this is a very protected, blessed, auspicious time as Jupiter is in its exaltation.
That's that's great to start. I love to start a podcast like that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
So go
so,
ahead.
I remember last time we talked, it seemed like there were quite a few planets changing signs this summer. Is that true?
Well, we actually had the last of the planets changing signs.
Mm.
So we had Pluto changing signs at the end of 2024, and then Neptune entered Aries at the end of March, and Saturn followed suit, moving into Aries at the end of May. And then we had Jupiter in June moving into Cancer. And now on July 7th, we have Uranus moving into Gemini. And
Mm.
Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018. And if you look at what has been happening from 2018 till now, we are going to see, kind of that scope of change, that scope of innovation, that scope of just a, a reordering of how we see the world and how we kind of align with what feels right and feels like living in our values.
Perfect timing for everything going on, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we could break down the Uranus in Gemini a bit because that's one of the signatures that really plays out for the summer. Because Uranus will be in Gemini and then go retrograde and then go back into Gemini. So, just as an introduction to welcome Uranus into Gemini, so, Uranus, as we know, is the planet that's associated with technological advancement, creative genius, large scale change. It's the first modern planet that was discovered by telescope. So you're already kind of getting this idea of like, what? There's more to the universe than the planets, the traditional planets. So it's this rebellious, revolutionary, expansive, eye-opening kind of planet. And significantly, Uranus in Gemini is what the US is kind of born under. So when the US formed, it was a Uranus in Gemini phase that occurred from 1775 to 1782. And so there you can see the duality of Gemini, British, American, old, new world. So there's this kind of existence and context of having kind of a choice or having binaries, having options, having this Gemini duality. And then Uranus is kind of helping us find a way to position ourselves in it, to find where we belong in this duality. And the same thing happened in the US's second Uranus return. And that was when the US decided we're a union against slavery. And then in the third US Uranus return is when it was the superpower against fascism. And so the last time that we had Uranus in Gemini was between 1941 and 1949, post World War II, where there is this Uranian chaos, and then there's that Gemini division, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
Revolutionary, it's shocking, it's chaotic, it's also directing us in a way that really kind of forces the choice of between these things that we can be, where are we most aligned?
Wow. Well, talk about big stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen overnight because Uranus is going to be in Gemini from 2025 to 2033. So now is a great time for it with where our country is at. And there is still time to feel into it, do something about it, be in the streets, and then, we'll live with the aftermath of it as well.
Yeah. Interesting. I being a Gemini and the two parts of that where we see now we're clearly divided in our country. It's interesting to see those divisions and how this is reflected in Uranus and Gemini.
Yes.
Hmm.
And I think there's a lot of excitement that comes from it too, because it is a very technological, advanced planet. And so the last time we had Uranus and Gemini was also when we had the first helicopter and when we had commercial air travel after all those years of freight travel and stuff.
Yeah.
So there is going to be a lot of, because it's also in Gemini, a lot of communications will be reinvented or innovated, and we're going to have a lot of tech advances. And so all of those things are coming for us, and to just know that we're a part of it and that we actually have a lot of power to shape it by being out there in the community, being in conversation, and all these Gemini curiosities that are very much alive and well right now.
Yeah, really good point because Gemini is so curious and a time of figuring things out and new things and learning new things. It is an exciting time, and we especially see that with AI, all the advances in AI. It's crazy.
Exactly. So we are into this time of chaos for a reason, revolution, innovation, communications, and also tech advances with
Yeah.
Uranus into Gemini. And then following that, we come into mid-July, and the beginning of August is really where some of this kind of growing pains can be felt because Mars is in conjunction to the South Node, and Venus is in difficult aspect to the malefics, Mars and Saturn. Plus, we have a Mercury retrograde come middle of July. So even though we have gone through, and I want to give us all a pat on the back for it, we have gone through all these planetary changes and signs already. And I think this middle part of July, where we get that Mercury retrograde and we get some of these more challenging aspects in the sky, one way that I can really think about it, especially because Saturn is involved, is it's a grasshopper and the ants moment where you just have to do the work first. And if we do the work, there is so much potential for a lot of freedom, which is what Uranus wants for us, and to really progress in a great way because Jupiter's to help is there to help us with expansion. And so even though it might seem like, oh, there's, the usual Mercury retrograde confusion or glitches or any of those things, if we really put the work and put in the effort through this mid July, early August time, then by mid August, things are really, really quite grand. Then we really feel some of that expansiveness of Jupiter, and we've had this retrograde to reflect, and we're really kind of pushing forward. So, just as a big picture idea of what's happening in Q3, big change with Uranus, and then a bit of a slowdown, a little bit of a, you know, retrograde season. And then we hit September, which is already, again, eclipse season with 2 eclipses in September.
It's just
So
so hard to believe that. I mean, we're zooming through this year. It's hard to believe we're at the second eclipse season already.
it's true, yes.
Mhm.
And so I think if we just kind of approach it with some of the chronology, then we can hit some spots and you can talk some energetics. But so after that, Uranus and Gemini, again, mid July to August, we have some conflict. And because it involves the outer planets as well as the inner planets, for example, Uranus and Saturn and these big social planets, and also it has inner planets like Mars and Venus. This is a time that we are going to feel and also see a lot of mirroring happening in the collective as well as our personal life and vice versa. Like if this transit doesn't really impact you, then maybe it's impacting the context that you live in, the city you live in, your community, or things like that. And if it's not really being felt for you in the collective, then maybe it is, a bit of a review of your personal life and your personal call to action and whatever that new adventure and that new avenue is for you. But in general, we have Mercury retrograde happening from July 17th through August 11th. And in this retrograde, we are moving from fire back into water. And so we've had this kind of, impulse of the fire. We had the, I don't know, like the spark to start something, an idea, a little bit of something. And then before we're ready to run with it, we get this cosmic invitation to just emotionally reflect and reconsider what it is we're hoping to do, what we want to accomplish, and all these things. So that's part of what that Mercury retrograde is for, because it seems like, yes, we want to hit the ground running and all these things, but also let's really take this momentary pause to think, is this the direction we're going to go full force in? How, like what is the game plan? What is the strategy before we head in that direction?
Makes sense. And especially with the planets right now in Aries, where we have some of that forward energy where we're wanting to get stuff done. And then, wait, let's just take a break for a second and double check everything before
Yeah,
we move forward.
absolutely. And then as soon as that Mercury retrograde is over, which ends on August 11th is one of the most beautiful days of the summer. Yeah, we have at so it's Mercury retrograde ends, and then we also have Saturn sextile to Uranus. And so Saturn is in a new sign, Uranus is in a new sign, and because of this, we have a sextile where they're supportive of each other. And so Saturn being that discipline, and then Uranus being that innovation, we have this, we have this potential to create strategies and to create a daily schedule and deadlines and all those things that Saturn gives us to serve that innovation and that energetic reset that we want in our lives. And so that happens on August 11th. And then we also have Venus conjunct Jupiter. So this is Jupiter newly in Gemini getting a conjunction with Venus. And these are the two great benefics, Jupiter being the great benefic, and then we have Venus. And so do something, and between the two, um, in Cancer, it's very much about belonging, it's about nourishment, it's about family, it's about homecoming, it's about um, these foundational structures that really hold us. And so we have a beautiful day to not only help us forward in whatever we're hoping to grow, but to have this connective relationship building, celebratory, joyful moment between the benefics to imbue us with this collective supportive energy.
And that's going to be so nice after having, going through Mercury retrograde and the other stuff happening then. It'll be like a breath of fresh air right there in the middle of August.
Exactly. Yes. So if things are a little messy at first, just, a little bit of keeping your nose to the grindstone and doing the work and putting in the effort. And it's not that far off. August 11th is there to give us some blessings and to help us along.
Yeah, something to look forward to. That's nice.
Yes,
Hmm.
and all of August has a lot of potential to move our projects along, to, see some visible, see some visible change and growth that we've been putting that potentially invisible work into.
Okay, great. Great news.
Yeah. And then as soon as September starts, it's eclipse season because we have, first of all, Saturn goes retrograde from September 1st to February of 2026. And then we have eclipse season. So there we have two eclipses in Saturn, which are two eclipses in September. And eclipses are beginnings and endings, fated beginnings and endings. And so as we're seeing Saturn, who just moved into Aries, go back and retrograde, we then have these eclipses. And so it is this big time to really review, reconsider, kind of edit, and then we have a better sense of what is ending and what is beginning. And that's how this quarter ends. Um, the first eclipse happens, it's a total lunar eclipse on September 7th. And it's a very, as far as eclipses go, this is a very positive eclipse. It's trine to Jupiter, and Jupiter rules this eclipse. So it's a helpful, protective eclipse. There's big emotion, it's a lot of possibility, and opportunity for discernment. So, for a lot of people who have been like just patiently or impatiently waiting for clarity, this eclipse is really helpful with it. It's September, we've had the summer to kind of try things out, to really be out in the world with our communities, talking to people, seeking counsel. And we really have this possibility to have a better idea of this eclipse with what it is we want to, move forward with. And
I
then,
like that. It's like we have, by the end of summer, we have clarity.
yes, yes. And it
Yes,
doesn't have to be complete clarity because, like we said, Saturn is in Aries for 3 years. So whatever we're
right.
beginning has some staying power. This start is not like, a necessarily quick start, but it is a very intentional and mindful start. And whatever we begin now, we will be beginning for the next 3 years.
Okay.
So, and then in September 21st, we have the Virgo new moon solar eclipse. And that happens um, just, on the heels of the protective eclipse. And this one has a very different feel to it. It's in opposition to Saturn. So it already has a little bit of that harsh, firm hand of Saturn, So there's going to be a lot of editing because it's in Virgo. And Virgo very much is, cross your T's, dot your I's kind of thing. And so here is an eclipse that is asking us to remove things. And in this eclipse, probably the most powerful thing we have to help us is that no is a complete sentence. You know, so much of what we have been learning to do is to practice boundaries and, you know, asserting things for ourselves. And this eclipse is a lesson in if you really want to be able to say yes to things, that you're going to have to say no. And either the no is a purge so that you have room for new things to enter, or even if it's a no and you don't know exactly what the yes is, to really kind of trust that that editing that you're doing in this eclipse is really allowing for the yes that, might really come in 2026.
I have to say, no coincidences. I love how this is set up. So the first eclipse, we get clarity. And then but by the time we get to the second eclipse where we know what we want, we have the power to say yes or no, whatever it is. So, I mean, come on.
Yes.
It's always laid
And
out so perfectly like this.
absolutely. I know. It's always a marvel to me. And that first eclipse, where we are able to have big emotions and those emotions informing us as to what's really important, what we'd really want to put the work in, what opportunities we're looking for, what we believe is possible for ourselves. And then the second eclipse is, even though the tone of it might feel harsher, for sure, and scrutinizing, because it has all those Virgo qualities, that if you want to do something and if you want to do it well, then there needs to be some level of focus. And so the second eclipse is really helping us to tap into that focus. And I think for some people, it might, and me included, it might feel harsh at first because we don't like saying no. I certainly did not grow up saying no as much as I have as an adult. But again, this is, the lunar nodes have only been here since January. And so this is something that we will be practicing for the next couple of years.
Yeah. Well, all in all, I think this sounds pretty good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah. And Jupiter, I think this quarter is a really great quarter to make headway into what we want for ourselves and for our community and our collective at large. So that seems very optimistic. And I definitely feel like, going into the summer, there is a little more optimism, and we're just, in the winter months when we might be more disconnected or something, the gift of Gemini is to be amongst others and to be in community and to have that solidarity and that strength through our collective action and our collective consciousness.
Now, before we end this, we have a new moon coming up like in, I don't know, a week or so, a weekish. And I think I remember last time you talking about we having two really pretty great new moons back to back. Is this another fabulous new moon?
Yes, yes, yes. The June 25th new moon in Cancer is very blessed, and it happens at the same time with a Jupiter Cazimi. And so a Cazimi is when any planet crosses through the sun and it has the whole blow up of the sun. And
Hmm.
so it's Jupiter, which is already an expansive, benefic planet, getting its solar glow up. And so yes, this new moon is a beautiful time, very protected, very nourished, very cradled in you know, this benefic energy to really plant those seeds of what we really want to be strong enough, brave enough, bold enough, slightly wild and crazy enough to go after. And so, yes, June 25th is a beautiful, and if not, I mean, one of the most beautiful new moons of the year. And it's a great one to be with family, with friends, with loved ones, with beside water, in pools, in joy, in optimism, and in a lot of bright energy.
Well, I mean, come on. What a fabulous way after a great, solstice to then have that new moon. So we got Jupiter moving into Cancer. Then we've got the solstice, and then we've got this lovely new moon. So, I mean, June's shaping up to be pretty dang good.
Exactly. And
Hmm.
really to, if you can, almost use it like your solar panels, where you're just soaking in all that bright goodness. Because, like I said, there's some work to be done, some choices to be made in July and on. And just to really take that optimism and kind of store it and write it down, be with people who remind you of it. And, you know, any revolution is not a linear thing. There's ups and downs. And so, knowing that you have this good energy to collect and store and put in your reserves so that when there's the work to be done, there is something still alight in you to push along those harder, more challenging stretches.
Well, and then to know also that August 11th, we have that great day coming too. So, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
I know. Yes. Yes. And I think that's important because right now it seems, and it is part of the collective, it's part of Uranus, it's part of, all the energies at work, is that it's a lot of chaos and volatility. And so it is very much validated to feel up one day and in the dumps the next, potentially, or feel very hopeful and feel like the tide's turning, and then also feel like, we've been in this for so long, or, this again. And so I think it's really important to have this kind of cosmic energy and this rhythm that helps us to take advantage of the times when there is something to help us and alleviate some of the pressure and release some of the tension that we've been holding. And then when there's work to be done, to approach it with, I tell my kids this, like, to approach it with a little bit of the whistle while you work idea,
Uh,
that it's a part of it, and nothing really comes without great effort. And the summer promises us a time that is potent with possibility if we're willing to do the work, if we're willing to put in the energy and really kind of, you know, do that ant thing of doing the work first. And then as of August, we can really enjoy some of the fruits of our labor. And then September is there with the eclipses to help us course correct if needed, you know?
yeah. Well, thank you. Always thank you for coming and sharing all your wisdom with us. I imagine this is probably a busy time for astrology readings. I know it's a busy time for me too. And if people want to book with you, your website is astropoetica.com. I'll put a link in the show notes. And Teresa is offering Abundology podcast listeners 30% off a reading with the code Renee30. So thank you for that. And if they don't, you said before we got on here, if they can't find a spot, on your calendar to send you an email with a couple spots, a couple times that may work for them, and you're able to squeeze some people in this year.
Absolutely. I work for a nonprofit during the year, but I'm in education. And so I have summers off and I have much more flexibility in my schedule. And I think that's one thing that I would really tell people too, because a lot of times in the summer, we pack ourselves full of things to do, and to really just knowing what the ebb and flow of the summer is going to be, make sure that when it's Mercury retrograde, or make sure when it's at work time, to really carve out a little bit of spaciousness for yourself, to not pack your schedule so much, so that if you are really going on a project or you have work that's really, spinning its wheels, to really take advantage of that. And for me, I have a lot of time this summer. And if people want to check in before the eclipses, before the end of the year, please do reach out with any dates that might work for you, because I have more flexibility and I'm grateful for it this summer.
Also, Teresa will be teaching 2 astrology classes at Spiritual Summer School, which starts July 8th and runs the whole month of July. So, with this stuff happening in July, it might be really great to go to Spiritual Summer School and have these uplifting classes. So, registration for summer school will be open this week too. So, thank you for that.
It
And
looks like a phenomenal lineup. I'm
oh
so
my gosh,
excited.
I'm so
Thank you, Renee.
excited. I'm so excited for all the classes that are going to be there this year. And it's interesting we're talking about Uranus and Gemini because one of the classes I'm going to be teaching is spiritual AI. I know. I'm so excited.
Cutting
All
edge.
right. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you again next time.
Thanks, Renee. Thank you, everybody.